I just picked up these beef plate short ribs from Costco the other day, but let me tell you what, the weather outside is miserable. These are something that I would typically put on my smoker and go low and slow, but today we're gonna be doing them here in my oven, and I'm gonna show you a method that will make them turn out absolutely perfect. So whether you have a smoker and it's terrible weather, or you don't even have a smoker at all, I'm gonna help you out with these beef plate short ribs. Now let's get started. First off, I see these beef plate short ribs all the time in Costco, and they usually go for a pretty good deal. Now these were running about $9 a pound. This is almost a 5-pound package, and I paid about $45 for them. Now this type of meat can be intimidating, especially if you don't know how to handle it or don't know how to prepare it. So I'm gonna show you today exactly how I do it. So I'm gonna start out, I'm just gonna remove all of these from the packaging. Then I'm gonna take a little bit of paper towel and I'm just gonna pat dry these off. And that's gonna help remove any excess moisture or purge from the ribs themselves. And it's gonna allow me to use a binder that will help our rub stick a little better rather than just the juices that are on these ribs here. Now you're gonna see that some of these are varying in thicknesses, so some will take a little longer to cook than others. Like example, this one compared to this one. Now, these aren't exactly the same as short ribs, but the method that we're gonna use to cook them is going to be the same. Now, these are basically like dino short ribs, saying that because look how big this bone is. Typically, short ribs gonna have bones about this wide, but these are dino. These are the big boys. I'm gonna take my knife, and I'm just gonna score up the back side of this a little bit, just in case there is a little bit of a membrane. This will help the pull back a little bit. Now some of these are down straight to the bone, but I'm still gonna score it up a little bit. Now today what I'm going to do is I'm gonna use a binder. A binder is something that we use to help the rub stick. We will be using some olive oil today. I'm just gonna drizzle some in my hand and I'm gonna rub it on all sides of this meat. Now that we have the ribs scored and we have the olive oil binder on there, it's time to season them. Now there's a couple different ways you could do this. Today, I'm gonna be using a homemade rub that I use that are gonna be perfect for these beef ribs. And I'm gonna put a recipe down in the description so that you can make it too. But if you're not into making your own rubs, I've got a couple suggestions for you. We've got the Bearded Butcher's Black. We also have the Bearded Butcher's Brock Lesnar blend. Both of these will be great on beef and great for you if you're looking for a rub. I'll also put links down to those in the description. But today I'm gonna be using my own rub. Now this is similar to a rub that I would use on brisket, but it's got a few extra added things that'll go great with these beef ribs. And because this is a nice thick cut of beef, don't be afraid to put the seasoning down on there. I'm gonna take my glove, the back side of my glove, and I'm gonna pat this seasoning in, and be sure to season all sides. We're gonna go ahead and do this to all of the ribs here. And using that binder is just gonna help seal in this rub to the surface. Now you'll see that there is some left on the cutting board, and you can use this since they're nice, flat, straight edges. You can actually dab up some of that seasoning on the rib itself. That way it's not going to waste. Now these ribs are seasoned up. It is time to get them onto a cookie sheet. And we've got a special sheet that we're gonna use. So I got this from Sam's Club and it also comes with a wire rack. Now that we've got this lined with foil, let's go ahead and get these beef ribs on here. Now it's time to get these into the oven, which we have preheated to 300 degrees. We've got the oven preheated to 300 degrees. It is time to get these beef plate short ribs inside. We've got the rack height set to about middle. We're gonna go ahead and get them in there just like so. Now we're gonna have these in here for about 2.5 hours or so, but what I'm gonna do is set my timer for 2 hours and 15 minutes. Now one thing that I need each and every one of you to understand is that your oven might run a little hot, it might run a little cold, it might run a lot hot or a lot cold. I know how my oven runs. Mine runs pretty darn close to true temp. You have to do your due diligence. Some of you might need a little extra cook time. Some of you might not. So keep an eye on it, and that's why we're setting this at 215, even though we know it should take about 2.5. So let's go ahead and get that done. 215. All right, we are about an hour and a half in, and let's take a look at these ribs. Oh, dang. They're looking good. We're getting some separation off the bones. And let me tell you what, they smell absolutely incredible. As you can hear, 2 hours and 15 minutes is complete. Now we're gonna do something here to check to see how done they are. Get yourself a toothpick and we're gonna check for tenderness. Now what you wanna do is you wanna take your toothpick and you wanna feel right in the meat. You wanna feel very little resistance. Now we're at 2 hours and 15 minutes in. These still feel a little gummy, a little rubbery. So we're gonna get this thing closed and we are gonna give this about another 15 to 20 minutes or so. We're gonna start with 15, we're gonna check it again. You want these to feel like you're pressing the toothpick into like peanut butter or butter. You want a little bit of resistance, but not much. We're still a little rubbery here, so we're gonna need more time. Still at 300 degrees, but we will set this for another 15 minutes. We'll check in then. All right, another 15 minutes has passed. Let's check the tenderness again with your toothpick. Now, some of these ribs are a little on the thicker side. They definitely tenderized up a little bit in another 15. Nothing seems to be overly dry or anything like that. They're actually very juicy. But I can tell you we're gonna need a little bit more time. So right now we're at 2.5 hours total. Now, some ribs are gonna be thicker, some ribs are gonna be thinner. So you wanna be careful. That's why we're starting with that 215 to 230. We're gonna go for about another 25 minutes. Now we're at about 3 hours and 15 minutes with these beef ribs. And as you can see, they are super tender, super tender. We've kicked the oven up to 425 degrees. We're actually gonna sauce these just a little bit, and we're gonna be using the Hey Grill Hey Everything barbecue sauce. This one's not too sweet. It's good with a lot of different meats, and we're just gonna put a little glaze onto these beef ribs. Now, you can stop here as long as they're tender. If you don't wanna sauce them, don't sauce them. We want a little bit of sauce on ours tonight, and I'm just gonna drizzle a little bit on here, kinda at the high spot. You can see on some of these, we got nice fat rendering, and that's when you know you're getting that nice tenderness. With beef ribs, they can tend to be tough if you're not careful, so that's why we wanna make sure that we're doing our tenderness checks with those toothpicks. You could do it with a fork, you could do it with an instant read thermometer probe, anything like that. You just want a nice, thin, sharp object that'll be just enough to test that tenderness. Now you're probably saying, well, why did we start the timer at 2 hours and 15 minutes if it ended up taking 3 hours and 15 minutes? Well, the truth is, and what I want you to understand, is that the thickness of these ribs can vary greatly. As you can see, some of these ribs look totally different from the others. Now, when I purchased them, I tried to make sure that I got the best looking, most uniform pack there at the store. But the truth is, there is still some variance. And if you ended up with a pack of ribs, you know, that are all like this size or this size or this size, you're gonna get them done a lot sooner. Now, because we had some bigger ribs, it took a little bit longer, but all of them are good. I actually checked the temperature as well. The internal temperature with my probe isn't necessary, but I wanted to see, and we were just under 200 degrees when we were checking them. Now, if we're on a smoker, we're looking for beef ribs to be around that 200, 203 degree mark, and we're just about there. We are going to get these back into the oven here in just a moment, now that it's preheated up to 425 degrees. And if you're interested in this everything sauce by Hey Grill Hey, I will put a link down in the description to that as well. Susie Bullock of Hey Grill Hey has some great products. Be sure to check them out too. All right, into the oven these ribs go, 425 degrees for about 5 or 6 minutes. All we're looking to do is for that sauce to caramelize. That's it. 6 minutes at 425 degrees, and these ribs are done. We just want to rest them for a little bit, so I'm going to take some of my heavy duty wide foil. We're going to tent it up over the top. We'll see you guys in about 25-30 minutes. We let these beef ribs rest for about 25 to 30 minutes, and damn, do they look good. Now, all of this work means absolutely nothing until we try it. But before we do, I want to talk really quickly about the time. The thickness of beef ribs tend to run a little different. Sometimes you're going to get some thin ones, sometimes you're going to get some thick ones. So be sure to start checking the tenderness, just like I said, around that 215, 230 mark, and then just keep increasing your time. Like I said, these took about 3 hours and 15 minutes. Then we put them for 6 minutes at 425 degrees with the sauce on it just to glaze them up. And I tell you what, they are beautiful. But with all that said and done, let's give them a try. Those are tender and those are frickin' delicious. And if you want delicious barbecue like these indoor oven beef ribs, then I suggest you subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time at Anderson's Smoke Show.